today's episode, we talk to Maggie Barr, Director of Content Strategy at AmTrust Financial Services. And the interesting thing about Maggie, aside from the fact that she and I worked together at a previous agency for about 4 to 5 years, is that Maggie came from a journalism background before getting into SEO. So she was really intriguing to me as an interview subject, and just kind of knowing her overall path and watching her journey, really intriguing. And the primary thing that I wanted to uncover was her experience. Not just was it different, but how was it different maybe from the traditional journey through the SEO career path. And as I've stated before, I'm just always so interested because I find that SEOs just come from so many different places. I always just want to dig deeper, almost when I first meet somebody in the field, just to understand where they came from, how they got there, what their successes and failures have been, and how their unique career path has fueled their unique experience, aside from probably some of the interesting stories that they have. And that's really the point of this podcast, is to dig deeper into the human experience within the SEO industry. Obviously share tips, but to really dig deeper into what it's like to be an SEO. So without further ado, let's bring in Maggie. Part 1, The Life.
What was your position? Price like everybody else, I was associate. What is that? What? One percent? No, I don't know. Tell me. Well, when the boss says push a button on a guy, I push a button.
So we are on with Maggie Barr. She is the Content Strategy Director of AmTrust Financial. How's it going, Maggie?
It's good. Thanks for having me, Jake.
Thank you for joining. So for those of you that do not know Maggie, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself to begin with. So Maggie and I go way back. We worked at Rosetta and Sapient Razorfish together. So we've worked together for quite a while. And Maggie is a really awesome content strategist, SEO background. Definitely work side saddle with me on a lot of different projects. So I think that if you're listening, you are in for some awesome stories.
Yay.
So Maggie, tell us a little bit about your background. So you're in content strategy right now, but you go back to the old days. You've been an SEO for a little while, and before that, you started somewhere completely different. So talk us through your background. Where'd you come from?
Sure. So I was a newspaper journalism major at Syracuse University. Syracuse has a really awesome journalism program. I thought I was going to be a New York Times reporter, be a real big hotshot. About midway through my college career, this was about 2005, newspapers started kind of tanking a little bit. The online world killed newspaper journalism. At the same time, Newhouse kept bringing in all these career speakers to motivate us, and they would say, the hours are terrible, you can't have a family, you live in these horrible places, you get paid nothing, but it's an awesome job. And I'm like, I don't know, that doesn't sound awesome to me. So I graduated in 2007 with a newspaper journalism degree, but did not want to be a journalist anymore. C'est la vie.
Awesome.
But I think, yeah, when you have a writing background, you can go a lot of ways with that. So it worked out for me. So my first job out of college, I moved to Washington, D.C., super excited, gonna take on the Capitol, and got a role in digital marketing where I was an online copywriter. So I was doing a little bit of SEO, like air quotes there, because this was back in 2007, 2008, where you were calling it SEO as long as you're like, yeah, I'm putting in keywords. It wasn't strategic. I wasn't even really using keyword research. I was just thinking of keywords in my head. And I think that's kind of a lot of the backwards SEO that people started with back in the day.
I think people still do that, by the way.
That's true, actually. That's probably very true. So that's kind of where I started. And I did a little bit of everything in that digital role, right? We were doing email marketing, et cetera. And then I decided I miss Cleveland. People make fun of me for that, but I love Cleveland. I wanted to come back home to Ohio. Yes. So I left DC and came back home. And this was 2009 when the economy was not stellar.
No.
I got a job at an agency. Was only there a couple months. They had massive layoffs. I got caught in that. It happened. Then I kind of bumped around with a couple freelance contractor, I'm desperate and I want to make income and not be on the streets type of jobs. Then the economy started picking up. I got a job at a smaller agency. Then I bumped over to Rosetta and was there for a while, and now I'm at AmTrust.
So one of the things that really, really fascinates me, and part of the reason that I'm doing this podcast, is not necessarily to focus on giving tips and advice. I think that'll come out organically, but that's not the focus. What I really want to focus on, what it's really like to be an SEO. And the thing that fascinates me most is SEOs come from so many different backgrounds. And, the first couple of episodes, I would say, of this podcast, I've interviewed people that have came more from the technical side. But you came from a journalism background. So talk to me about what was that like and what challenges did that present as you got into doing SEO?
Yeah, so I think I kind of moved more into SEO and, the SEO content writer type of position. And I think there's been a shift in SEO recently where I did kind of start out more technical based. I mean, you had keywords, but technical, I think, kind of dominated the SEO realm. But now I think content in a lot of ways almost overshadows technical. I know we may have some disagreements there, but I think content kind of overshadows it, right? Because you have to have content to rank and you have to have interesting content to get people to convert, et cetera. So I think when I first started, it was kind of like the content writers, here's the topic, here's the keyword, just churn out your little writing like you guys do. And over the years, as I was in it, it changed a lot. I became a lot more involved in the strategy. I was doing keyword research. I was setting the tone. I was doing a lot of the reporting, looking at a lot of the analytics. So I think a lot of people that started from the content perspective moved out of that sole writer position into a little bit more of a wholesome role where you're doing everything. And then technical, I think a lot of content people picked up a lot of technical, again, because it is an important part of SEO. If you're not having your technical ducks in a row, your content's not going to be found. So I think that there was a lot of blend of skills that kind of naturally emerged over the years.
So let me get down into kind of the nitty gritty, and I want to keep on the journalism and the content writer thing, because obviously with us working together, we kind of know kind of what went on a little bit behind the scenes. So I guess talk about how difficult it was to shift from coming from a journalism background and getting into SEO, and then being thought of as a content writer for a long time, and not necessarily being able to find a way into the SEO career path, not because you didn't want it to happen, but because of the perception from those above. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I don't think this was probably unique to Rosetta, but there definitely was a silo, right, of if you write content, we'll feed you the SEO keywords and you can bake them in there, but kind of stay out of the strategy, stay out of the analytics, et cetera, and just kind of live in your little content house. And I think that has broken down a lot, not just at Rosetta, which kind of shattered that model, and then the content writers kind of just became the regular SEO team members. But I think that's happened a lot of different places, that, it's a universal role. I think an SEO person often does have writing skills, they have technical skills, et cetera, that they're not just an SEO person, that the skill set has broadened.
Yeah, and for a while there was the thought that the content people could not or should not be SEOs or given strategy work. And I know at the time I fought pretty hard against that, because I just didn't think it made sense for people who were trying to advance in their career to get stuck from a career path and not be able to go any farther along because people only thought that all they could do was right. And that's where I think a lot of people that come from the marketing or content side get pigeonholed, in that people, whether it be in management or upper management, for some reason, and maybe this doesn't exist as much anymore. I hope it doesn't. I haven't seen it in a few years, but for some reason, there's this perception that if you're a writer, you can't also be a strategist and you can't learn technical. And that was definitely a big box that we broke down together, and along with a few other people there. And honestly, by the time we both left, the people that started as content writers were some of the strongest and most well-rounded strategists that there were. And really the only barrier was opportunity and some level of training.
Right.
And it seems like at some places people just don't want to necessarily do that or allow that or whatever. So that's something that I remember that kind of stuck with me, that I never felt right about, but that I'm glad for you and for your sake that it resolved well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of content people, because you're coming at it from the perspective of the writer, have kind of a different take on keyword research that sometimes can almost be stronger, because you're so aware of what the article is going to be about, kind of where you see it going, that you're able to do the keyword research ahead of time, and it's more closely aligned to what the topic is actually going to be about. And I think that some people that are their wheelhouse is content, they can just see the broader picture on the content strategy and lay out different topics and kind of create pillar topics and supporting topics a little bit more clearer than some of the people that are more technical based. Not to say technical people can't do it, because I know you're very good at content strategy too, but I think a lot of the content based people are very strong in that.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I think a lot of the content based people, or the people that come from that background, not only are stronger when it comes to the strategic end and the keyword research, but understanding the mind of the consumer. For me, at least, it seems like on the technical SEO side, it's a little bit more black and white and cut and dry. And when you come at it from the other side, it's a lot more than just looking up a keyword. It's understanding what websites are ranking, how their content is geared, how the user is going to perceive it, what's the intent of the query, what's going to happen from a user experience standpoint, or what should happen when they get to the site, what's in their mind, what's the persona. And I think that people coming from that opposite background bring that pretty strong sometimes.
Yeah, and I do think the journalism background helps a lot too, because I had the training of asking questions and doing the research and listening to people and getting a sense of, their story, et cetera. And I think that's helped me a lot, especially in my current role now that I'm in-house, talking to the salespeople, talking to our agents, talking to different people internally, and just kind of drilling them with questions in like that artful journalism type of way that helps me then take that back to the content strategy and get ideas for areas that we're missing, some of the gaps that we have that you can't necessarily find that in competitive research and some of the tools that we have, like you do talking to your clients and your internal people. So I think that that's been very helpful for my current role.
So tell me about a success, and then tell me about an oh shit failure that you've had.
Sure. So I was thinking about this ahead of time. Hold on one second. There's a few things that I've worked on that I've been particularly proud. There was a resource center that I launched for, I'm not client name here, but they're currently out of business, so it probably doesn't matter. But they were a retailer that sold a large retail client, regional retail client, and they sold electronics and even furniture, those type of things. They kind of had a wide range of retail stuff. But we created this resource center to get organic traffic. That was the main purpose of it, right? We wanted visits to the site. And it was also a way to help ranking back to the main product pages, because if we're trying to rank for 4K TV and we write a whole article about like where can you stream 4K shows. It would help the product page rank, etc. So we built out a really elaborate resource center, and not only did it rank really well, it was one of those beautiful charts where you just like see the rankings like just
Up and to the
skyrocket
right.
up.
Up and to the right.
Yes, up and to the right. It was beautiful. But it also started generating revenue, and that was not the primary objective of that, right? Like we knew it probably wasn't going to be revenue generating, but it ended up generating some revenue, and it's not like it generated $1 million. It was small, but that was a really nice bonus to that even content that was educational and informative that wasn't trying to sell products at all was selling products. So that was definitely one of the things that I was most proud of.
So what went into, like, all right, how did you go from saying, hey, I've got this idea, I want to do a resource center, to implementation in through to the results? Like what went into that in terms of, because I have a hard time, and any SEO has a hard time convincing clients to do the things that you want them to do. That's actually the hardest part. The easy part is making the recommendations. A lot of people, a lot of clients, when they hear resource center, it doesn't immediately ring the revenue bell, right? But it, as you said, in a roundabout way. So like, how did you get them on board?
So part of it was luck, right? We had a really great relationship with the client. They were amazing to work with. And then a lot of times when you have just an SEO client, I think you run into a little bit more snags because you don't have access to their CMS, et cetera. But we had access to their CMS. We were doing all the publishing. And Diana, complete rock star on our team, just started learning code and building out pages and just kind of playing around with it. And we were tossing around the idea of making a resource center. And she's like, I think I can lay it out. And she just kind of whipped something together. And, you know, I think you kind of do this a lot of times in our industry where you just sort of make it work, right? So we didn't have to go through their IT team. They didn't have to submit a request. We didn't have to do dev work. We just sort of made it happen. And then, you know, we put together some categories, some initial content, and then it just started to get traction. Their team liked it. They shared it out on social. They shared it out on email. So we had support on the other channels as well. And it just started doing really well, and people started getting excited about it. And then they were able to take that to their bosses and say, look at how good this is. And then they got some support from their graphics team. We had some cool graphics. So it's just a lot of things aligned at the same time that all worked out.
So tell me about your oh shit moment.
So probably the biggest one, and I know a lot of people in this industry can probably relate to this. When I switched between agencies, I got slapped with a non-compete violation from my previous and I think we all sign those non-competes not really quite reading them or thinking about them, and you just kind of throw your signature on there. But most non-competes will say that you cannot work for a competitive agency within X amount of time and X amount of miles. But if you live in a smaller city like I do, you're probably not planning on moving 500 miles away, and you're probably not planning on having 2 years in between your jobs. So that becomes problematic. But what was cool about that, you know, I got slapped with the non-compete, and I about shit my pants. I was 26 years old. I thought I was going to lose my job and have to pay.
I can't work. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty scary. But I remember the director of the media department, Jason Tabling, was so funny about it. He was almost like seeing it as like a badge of honor. Like, we have such top talent that all the other agencies are getting so pissed they're trying to sue us. It was just like a funny reaction. And Rosetta was a really great company. They said, don't worry about it. We'll take care of this. We will cover any financial ramifications and provide you with legal counsel. So I actually went with the head of HR down to the Cleveland courthouse and had to meet with a mediator. Yes. Had to meet with a mediator. And the way that works, the mediator talks to our lawyer and their lawyer, and then each lawyer goes and talks to each side of the party. And I'm not allowed to discuss the specifics, but they did come to a agreement and a settlement. And I kept my job and moved on with my life.
Man, I've heard, so I mean, I know I've signed non-competes before and they've never been enforced. I'm not sure if I should take that personally or not, or they've never actually been a problem, but, I haven't heard of many companies enforcing and like going to that extent with respect to non-competes. And I know, especially up in the Cleveland market, right? The agencies stay the same and the people kind of rotate. It's kind of like musical chairs between all of the common agencies and things, people go back and forth and so on and so forth. And it just seemed like that was accepted and allowed. And I just, from my experience, I didn't see a lot of non-competes flying around. It seemed like poaching was pretty normal. So that actually surprises me that you go through that and that they took it that far.
Yeah, I mean, usually when you hear of a non-compete, it's because someone either took resources, like they stole staff members to their new company, or clients. It's very unusual for someone to enforce it just for changing.
But that happens too, where one person goes and then the next thing you know, 5 more people walking out the door in the next 6 months. Yeah.
Right.
That's
and that's what the lawyer told me. He said it's almost impossible to enforce it because of capitalism. I mean, you have to be able to work, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of times companies will settle purely because to go through all the back and forth, it's just cheaper to throw some money at it. So that's what happened.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
So you mentioned something earlier that I wanted to touch on, and we were talking before we hit record. So Will Reynolds of Seer Interactive wrote what I thought was a really interesting article about what it's like to lose your biggest client and, having to go through layoffs and things like that. So when you went through a layoff, what was it like? What did you feel like?
So I've been through a couple, I've only been laid off once, but I've been around a couple companies that have. So the first layoff that I had, again, I was younger. I just moved back home. I still live with my parents. So that helped absorb the shock a little bit, right? I didn't have like a family to support at the time. I wasn't even paying rent. But it's disheartening. You feel very discouraged. And it's usually not personal. It's not that you're a crappy worker. It's a numbers game, right? Like when I got laid off that round, I think about 10 other people did too. When I was at Rosetta and they did a round of layoffs, I was actually on maternity leave that first time. So I don't even think legally I could have been laid off. So I was sort of in a safe zone there.
You got lucky.
But it sucked. It sucked though. There were a lot of good people that got laid off, again, just from a numbers perspective. I can't remember how many they cut that time, but it was a big portion of our media department. And there were a lot of talented people that I worked with, that I was friends with, that lost their jobs. It's very disheartening. And then there was that second round at Rosetta, which was just a terrible day. All of a sudden your friends were disappearing from Link. You didn't see their name lit up, and people were clearing out their desks. People were crying, and that was very disheartening. But it happens, right? You can understand from an economic standpoint when the economy is not doing great, that marketing is often one of the first things companies cut. And it's a risk in our industry that layoffs will happen.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I learned out of all of it is that it's never good when it's not that it's not good to have big clients that pay you a lot of money, but it's never good if you're in a situation where if you lost that client, you lost most of your revenue, to have kind of too many eggs in one basket. And that was, I think, a situation that we faced without a strong BD backlog. And I remember, anytime you're at an agency, you go through this from time to time where just rifts just happen. It's just kind of part of the ebb and flow, and clients come and clients go. And I remember during one of them, and I was at the time traveling, I live in Columbus, was traveling to Cleveland. I came up to the Cleveland office in the morning, and this happened randomly, and it was like, it kind of blew my mind. The 4 people that I spoke to in the morning, as soon as I got in, it just so happened that they crossed my path and I spoke to them, all got laid off almost immediately after speaking to me.
Yeah.
And man, talk about not feeling great and feeling really bad for those people. Yeah, that was a tough day. So
It
yeah.
was, and I anyone working in marketing, you always kind of want to have that contingency fund just because you can get laid off. It's
Mhm.
a difficult job. Also, then you have like daycare and rent, and sometimes the contingency fund's a little dicier to store up. But I do try and keep that in mind that marketing is a career path that when the economy is struggling a little bit, you can be at risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So in terms of the SEO industry, I do want to get into kind of what you're doing now with respect to content strategy. What do you love about the industry and what do you hate about the industry?
Sure. So to kind of give the same answer is the change. I love the constant change, right? Because it's almost like a puzzle, and you're every day kind of putting it together a little bit different. It keeps changing, right? And all the little pieces contribute to your rankings and your overall success. And those little pieces change. They're not always the same month over month or year over year. So I like that, and it's interesting. And my job is fun to talk about. People think it's like, oh, that must be such a fun job. But it also drives me crazy, right? Like once you have a strategy that starts working, all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore. And I think a good example when we were at Rosetta is, we did a ton of the paid blog posts where we were putting, the strategic anchor links, like everyone in the industry, right? And then, and I mean, we were investing heavily in that. That was a big portion of our strategy, and because it worked. And then Penguin hit, and everyone's like, "Oh crap! Like what? What are we gonna do now?" But yeah. But I think that's like again part of our industry where like you have that momentary like, "Oh my God, SEO is over, and what are we gonna?" But it's not, and you adapt, and there's new strategies, and you find new ways. So I guess I like love and hate that. It tortures my soul, but it's interesting at the same time.
So tell me about what you're doing now. How does it differ?
Yeah. So first of all, the big difference, I'm in-house, right? And that's a big difference from being agency side. There's a lot of pros and cons of that, right? Like I have access to the subject matter experts. I work with them. I see them in the elevator. I know them. They're my team members. I have access to IT. We have weekly meetings. I can get things pushed through. I have access to the CMS. If I want to change something, I can go in right now and change it. That part's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I do miss the agency life at times. It's a little crazy, but I did like being around people that are all also SEO nerds, right? Like you had a lot of smart people that you could bounce ideas off that were in your field too. And I had a lot of great team members, but they're not necessarily, it's not like a room of 30 SEO nerds anymore. It's very different. So I like that, but I think also the big difference too, I'm not solely in an SEO role anymore. I'm in content strategy. So I sometimes am involved in content that has nothing to do with the organic channel. It's email content, and we'll make video content that's just going to go on social, et cetera. And I think to say it has nothing to do with organic is probably a little bit of a stretch, right? Like I think having that background and knowing topics and keywords that resonate well on organic will resonate on every channel, right? Like if people are interested and they're going to search for it on organic, they're going to also be interested in the same topics on social. So I think that plays into it even when I'm not like specifically making organic content.
So how do things like your day-to-day and your KPIs and how does everything differ now that you're not just focused on organic?
Mm-hmm. So I'm in charge of content strategy for all of AmTrust, and AmTrust has many brands. AmTrust has acquired a ton of companies over time. I couldn't even list all the brands that we own. There's probably about 6 major ones that we support right now. So each of those have different content strategy, and I'm making overall plans for each of those. I have a team of 4 writers. We're pretty busy. We get inundated with a ton of requests. We do a lot of email, a lot of blogs, and we also do print material, which was mostly completely new to me. We still do a lot of brochures. We do direct mail, et cetera. Yeah, like what direct mail? What is that?
Like John Draper, geez.
Yeah, but that's been interesting too. And I think the other cool part is just having an in-house team, like we have an in-house video guy, so we can come up with any idea and we can go right to him and say, hey, Andy, we have this idea for a video that would support it, and he's in-house and we can have it done. I think having the access to the team has been really cool, because pretty much any idea you can have, you can make it happen.
Yeah, that was the, so I've been in-house twice and in agencies 3 times. And for some reason, I tend to gravitate towards the agency side. Maybe it was just the times that I was in-house. The place that I was at just wasn't right for me. But I found that when I was in-house, I enjoyed some of the same things that you did, the access, the ability to just go change it, just go do whatever I needed to do. But I also honestly felt isolated, and there was kind of an isolating effect to being not only just the only SEO, but in some cases the only marketing person. So it was a little bit isolating to feel like that and not have a large team or other people to bounce ideas off of. So that for me was something that I struggled with, which is why I'm now back in agency world, right? Where it can be a little bit maddening to actually get changes through. And I've had to learn to go back to being a little bit more patient, and realizing that that something I could have done in 15 minutes, when I was in-house, may take weeks or months to get done back in agency world. So big difference.
Yeah, I think AmTrust is kind of a good blend, because we have about 25 people on the marketing team, and we kind of call it like an in-house agency is the terminology that our CMO likes to use. So there is a team, our web production guy knows SEO. A couple of my content writers know SEO. We do have an SEO director as well. So there still is a team aspect, and, I can talk like SEO nerd shop with people, but it's different than an agency. And I do miss a lot of that thought leadership, a lot of the learning, a lot of the education. You can still get that, but you have to be a little bit more self-motivated to find that. And you're not constantly thrown on different clients and faced with different SEO problems, because your site day to day is like pretty constant. There's not all these changes necessarily day to day. So it's different.
Yeah, it surely is. So tell me about one of your mentors. Who helped you come up?
Sure. So there's been a few. Obviously, aside from like family growing up, like my parents were a big influence, my older brother, etc. But I think starting at Rosetta is where I started really developing more career mentors. The first one that I want to mention is Jess Andrus. Jess was really great, because I think as a woman, it's always nice to find another woman that can kind of show you like that strong female leadership. And Jess was awesome, and she was definitely one of those people for me. She was my career manager. At one point, I know I've had like a million while I was at Rosetta, but she was great. She just was very approachable. She, helped me maneuver through, some of that transition from content writer a little bit more into that content strategy role, kind of just starting to make that move, et cetera. So she was great. And then probably the other one, there are two. Brian Dean, who is awesome.
Not Backlinko, Brian Dean.
Not Backlinko. But Brian, I think where Brian was so strong, he really taught me a lot about managing people, working with people who have different styles, and kind of adapting to that. And he was just also great with clients, right? Brian just kind of had that soothing voice, and he could handle any question and just, Brian, you could go in there with a problem and you could, ramble on for 15 minutes, and Brian would basically say, I hear what you're saying and I can't fix it. But you would walk out of there and you'd feel better. Like, he just got that way with people. Yeah, he was very good at that.
I likened him, and I'm glad I get to work with him now. I like it, and I actually don't get to work as closely with him as I would like, but I still get to be a part of the same company, so that makes me happy. He was definitely one of the people that I missed quite a bit. But you're right. For me, he felt like, even though he's not that much older than me, it was like my dad.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to go in and get a little pat on the head from Brian, or like, I never felt any level of fear or nervousness when I was going into a meeting with Brian, because I knew he had my back. right? No matter
Right.
what situation came up, that he would back me up, and whatever play I made, he would figure out a way to make it work on the client side. He's really, really good with clients, and actually really good with, honestly, he's really good and well versed in SEO and in digital marketing in general. Although he would never admit to that or say that. He usually likes to be the guy cracking jokes in the room. That's like his, when he's in his element. But he's pretty amazing, and he's on point, but he kind of keeps it on the down low.
Yeah.
Love Brian.
And then my third mentor would be Jake Stoops. So,
Hey,
yay. Yeah, I mean,
I'm honored.
as I talked about, I was a content person. I really didn't know technical SEO until we started working together. And I remember you kind of took me under your wing and showed me very basic things like, this is the robots TXT file, and very carefully walked me through all of that. And I really didn't know any technical SEO at all. And, now I know technical pretty well. Like I learned that from you. And I remember one of the things that you had said to me, which has always kind of stuck with me, is that, like you can solve any technical problem. You just need to research it and refer to like Google Webmaster guidelines, because most of it's in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I have that with me, like anytime I run into a technical problem, a lot of times I'm able to just research it, even if I've never seen the problem before, and you can usually find a solution. And that's stayed with me throughout the years. It's been very helpful. And also you made an amazing technical template, which was so helpful to everyone.
I like that. I can't say that it was mine. It came from my forefathers at Rosetta, and I adapted it, but glad other people are I still use it, and I'm glad other people are still using it. But yeah, I would say for me, the most satisfaction and the greatest, I would say my greatest moment and my proudest moment at anywhere professionally was watching people like yourself and helping people like yourself move along in their career path and just grow professionally, grow personally, whatever. Any client result that I've gotten, and I feel like I've had some pretty good client results and some good client wins over the years, has never even paled in comparison to the amount of pride that I feel or felt watching you lead an account, or watching Margie, who people don't know, lead an account, and just watching you guys kind of grow and come into your own as strategists, and walking away from Sapient Razorfish and allowing you guys to transition to be the leaders. When you were still there, that was kind of a bittersweet but an amazing feeling, and that stuck with me. It still sticks with me. So that's I found out a lot about myself in that way, in terms of like, what do I want professionally, what's right and what's wrong. So, and that actually for me helped me get to where I'm at now at Search Discovery, because for me, Startups.co was a great opportunity, but that part for me was missing entirely, and for me it just never left me. So I'm back doing what I do. So
yeah, and I think what I've learned from you and Brian, I've like carried on now that I'm a manager and I have 4 direct reports, and I feel like my management style reflects very much what I learned from you and Brian. And we have a really great team. We all work really well together, and I'm glad that I learned those skills, because not all managers are great to work with, and I've been very fortunate.
No, they are.
And I think the other aspect that I learned from you and Brian, and I know we talked about this at Brian's happy hour, going away happy hour, after a couple of beers, but you guys were both family people. And I think for me, I had 3 kids kind of back to back, and seeing our leadership really emphasizing like, you can be a parent and you can also be awesome at your job, was really encouraging for me. And I think that's a big part of the reason why I was able to be successful as a mother in, kind of a male dominated industry for us. Yeah. And I mean, I felt very supportive with that. And I never felt guilty for like taking my kids to a therapy appointment or something, because you guys set the tone very much of like, do your job and be awesome, and you can also be a parent. And I think that was very key to my success there.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of be efficient and be awesome while you're at work. And when you're not at work, don't be at work, right? Not that I am against working 50 or 60 hours a week, but I feel like that and a family, even that without a family, becomes unsustainable at a certain amount of after a certain amount of time. And I'm all about also competence, whether you're man or woman, green, blue, red, whatever. If you're competent, you're good with me. But if you're a arrogant dumbass, we have problems. So
right.
One thing you touched on before we get into the next segment, this first segment's always runs long, is being a female. What's it like in a male-dominated, in my opinion, a male-dominated profession, especially in my experience when it comes to management versus your regular run-of-the-mill strategist? What is that? Just drop it on me. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I do feel like with other females, Margie that you mentioned earlier, definitely sometimes we have some jokes, so we might throw out some phrases like mansplaining, etc. But I feel like I've been very fortunate that most of the people I've worked with, regardless of your gender, have been fine, right? There's always some outliers there that, there are some stereotypes and et cetera, all that. But for the most part, I feel like I've been very fortunate. But I do think sometimes as a female, you have some stereotypes working against you, even on certain client calls. We had one client where they had a team that worked in India, and I know when me and the other female would be on the call and we'd answer a question, they would not believe us, but when our male counterpart would reiterate the same answer, they would accept that and move on. So, you definitely run into some things occasionally. And he could word for word repeat what we had said, and they'd be like, oh, okay. And that's frustrating, right? But ultimately, it's I think if you're good at your job and you get your work done, regardless of your male or female, you'll be successful.
Absolutely. And that's, I think it's a great attitude. Part 2, making your bones. So let's move into the second segment. So time to make your bones, drop a knowledge bomb, tell me something, or tell the listeners something they didn't know before.
So one thing, like I said, moving in-house that I thought was really helpful was having access to people. And one of the things that I did early on was go to our call center. And this is an overlooked gem for both an SEO perspective and just a content perspective, because they are the people all the time getting the phone calls where people are constantly asking them questions. And they're the ones that will be able to tell you, this is content you're missing on your website. These are what our clients want to know. And if you're not tapping into that, you are missing a huge opportunity, because that content is not easy to find, or it's not clear on your website, or they don't understand it. And that's something that you need to address immediately. And when you work with the call center in that respect and start providing that content, potentially you can even reduce some of the calls to your call center, which could save your company money in the long run too.
How would you do that if you were on the agency side?
That's tricky, right? But I do think working with whoever your client contact is, and even saying can you hook us up with the call center and have them provide us the top 10 most common questions, because most call centers track that and they probably provide that reporting, if not for an SEO perspective, but I think they provide that for training purposes anyway. They probably have some kind of a manual that the call center operators can click through to the common answers there. So that material is probably there. I think you just need kind of like a sponsor on your client side that can help you get that.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a theme that kind of came through earlier with respect to your resource center stuff. And in our last episode with Sal Sura, his site speed stuff, really important to have an internal kind of sponsor above you that can help you champion things through the process or get you the access that you need to get things implemented. Very, very underrated and important thing to check off. So what tools are you using these days?
You know, a lot of the same ones that I used at the agency, right? I think the biggest pain point for me going in-house is that I don't have access to every single expensive tool out there. You know, we had Conductor, we had Bright Edge, et cetera, and now I have SEMrush, which SEMrush is a good tool. I very much miss Bright Edge and I miss DataCube. But there's a lot of cool features in there, right? And I think no matter what your budget is, there's things like, I think SEMrush is like under $2,000 for the year. It's very inexpensive. Pretty much anyone can probably get the funding for that. And it has a lot of good tools in there. It has a lot of good, you know, content, topic research, et cetera. It has keyword tracking that actually updates every day, which is kind of cool. Bright Edge was only once a week. But I do miss some of the wider agency tools that we had. And I think, you know, some of the free things like Answer the Public, I love that. I love keywordtool.io, even though I use the free version and it doesn't tell me search volume. I just really like that tool. I think the keywords that pops out are good. BuzzSumo, again, I use the free version. I don't even have the paid version, but they were content topics and they were trending topics. I think you can only do 10 searches a day. But that's usually, you know, enough for my needs. That's an awesome tool, especially for being free. Those are kind of the main ones that I've been using right now. And then, I mean, Google Search Console and Google Analytics, obviously, I'm popping in there all the time.
So let me flip this question around because I feel like everybody has kind of mentioned the same tools. So how about this? What tools do you steer clear of?
You know, I still use Google Keyword Tool, but not like I used to. I think if you had asked me probably 5 years ago, that would have been my primary keyword research tool. That's where I would have gone first. But I find that I use other keyword research tools, and that's kind of my last resort, which is definitely a big change in the industry. And I think a lot of people are starting to move away from the keyword tool.
It's when they broadened all of the search volume and aggregated it all instead of giving you specific search volume. I used to use that every day, and now I can't remember the last time. It's been years since I've been in that tool. So it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that's sad because I used to really like that one, but there's other options out there that I feel are better.
Yeah, one of my, as you mentioned, SEMrush. That's a great tool. Ahrefs also, and I had a unique experience with them where I wrote a blog article about like 50 or 51 greatest SEO tools, and I had not been in Ahrefs for quite some time, and I made and it wasn't really a mistake because this was the experience at the time, how it only really focused on like the linking side, kind of like Majestic, and I basically said, it's not that great. And Tim Sulo from over at Ahrefs actually reached out to me and said, I think we've done a little bit since maybe you were last in it. Why don't you go check it out? And gave me a 6-month free trial membership. And ever since then, I've been like the biggest Ahrefs kind of fanboy in terms of like their tool and kind of how they market their business. And I've just been like, I couldn't be like more invested in how awesome or more complimentary of how far their tool has come, to the point where like it went from being just a link analysis tool to like a comprehensive enterprise level solution, right? So I'm a big fan of Ahrefs. You couldn't tell.
What's their price point? Are they like between SEMrush and Bright Edge?
Yes. Yeah. So I think they're pretty comparable, and they've got different packages, pretty comparable to SEMrush from a pricing standpoint. There are differences, right? And there are some similarities with each of those tools. And I know like a lot of people lean one way or the other, or lean to a completely different tool altogether. But yeah, they're pretty similar pricing wise and cost effective.
That's interesting. Yeah. I've used Ahrefs, but it's been a while. One of the clients had it at Rosetta. I can't even remember who now, but that's interesting. I'd like to check that one out again.
Yeah, you should. So your best SEO advice to somebody who is just getting into the industry, or content strategy advice, digital marketing advice, what would you tell them?
Read. I mean, honest to God, this can be a very self-taught profession, right? Like there's not a major for SEO. You can't go to school and get a degree in this. Well, maybe you can now, but not in my day. And even if you could, it changes so frequently, right? So if you're not reading out there are so many blogs, there are so many tips, there are so many, just so much information, the Google Webmaster Guidelines, etc. You have to be reading. And if you don't like reading, you can watch video. There are tons of SEO videos. There are podcasts like this one. I've started listening to marketing podcasts on my drive to work in the morning. And there's one with Neil Patel does one where he does your daily SEO tip. It's 7 minutes long. He does that every single day. It's very easy to learn if you want to, but you have to be proactive. You have to go out and find the information and consume it.
Yeah, I have found that some SEOs, and again, I think this is great advice, having kind of a natural curiosity is very important. And I have found that some folks in the industry that I've worked with have this to the point of like they are always wanting to learn more and be a sponge. And to some degree, others not so much, content to just progress along a little bit more slowly when the actually reading and learning and soaking up all of the information, because like you said earlier, it's all out there. The answers to most SEO questions are all out there. They're just not all in one place. So looking up the answers, and there's a lot of people publishing content on marketing and SEO, content strategy, so on and so forth. And not that everybody's opinion is right or should be followed, but there's no lack of creative inspiration. And it wasn't necessarily always that way until people like the Rand Fishkins of the world started sharing. And ever since then, SEO has been an industry where things are very, very secretive, yet not secretive at all. SEOs are always willing to share, even when your competitors, right? I plan to interview people working at competing companies, and I have no qualms about talking shop. And that's just been something about the SEO industry that like people are ready to help and teach you if you're willing to read and learn. And reading and curiosity, like that almost can't be taught. You have to want it. You have to want to go out, and you have to put in the time. And if you're not willing to do that, well, somebody might pass you by.
Yeah, and I found that SEO people are so friendly and will answer questions. I know there's a Reddit thread. I think Jeff Luella actually started it at Search Discovery on technical SEO. And I've thrown out a couple questions on there before. Again, technical is not my wheelhouse. I know enough technical to go in there and do some things, but when I get really deep, I've asked a couple questions and people respond pretty detailed and provide you, here's how to fix it. And these are complete strangers that are answering my questions. I found it to be a very helpful industry.
Yeah, it surely is. Part 3, Getting Made.
We're about to induct you as a member of our family of Cosa Nostra. That means you are to place this brotherhood above God, above government, above family. You understand?
So last segment. So getting made into the Page 2 podcast family means that you have to share a personal fact, something about yourself that nobody else knows. Well, maybe somebody knows that the people wouldn't know.
Yeah. So I thought about this one, and I was going to say something about, kind of like I had the 3 kids back to back, but I'm like, everyone probably knows that about me. I'm not quiet about that. So I was thinking about it, and my husband and I actually met on eHarmony, and I don't think a lot of people necessarily
know about
that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fun. Yeah, because it's like a dating algorithm, right? Like even in my dating life, I did like an algorithm to find my spouse. It's like just kind of funny how that's all played into the same world. But it was just kind of like good timing that he had joined and I had joined. And my cousin actually bought it for me, I think for like a birthday gift or something, for like a 3-month trial. She's like, oh, just try it. And we both got partnered up, or I don't know, I can't remember now. It's been so long. It's not like a swipe right on eHarmony, but we got matched, and then we went out for coffee, and we had only both been on there for a very short time, and then we both just like, deleted our accounts and just started dating, and now we're married. It was just very, yeah. I mean, it was 29 levels of compatibility. That's their their whole tagline, and it really worked out there.
So were you ever on any other dating sites? And the reason I ask is because I've heard eHarmony is like so much more in depth with respect to like the information that they require, so that they can do a better job of algorithmically matching you.
I never tried any of the other ones, and this was back in 2009 too. So like there wasn't Hinge, or I can't remember all the other ones the kids are doing these days, but those didn't exist yet. So I think it was mainly eHarmony and Match, and I think there might have been like Plenty of Fish or something, but and maybe like Craigslist has like a dating thing, but I didn't do anything weird like that. But yeah, like it was very detailed. Like it was like, do you like to make your bed every morning? Like it was like weird questions, right? And like, I don't know, do they match like a non-bed maker with a bed maker? I'm not really sure what goes into that, but yeah, I mean, you got very specific, like what religion are you on a scale of 1 to 10? How much do you care about like what your partner's religion is? I mean, it was very specific, very detailed.
Wow. Yeah. See, I would be just a total disaster with respect to dating sites and in today's dating game, because I just have no idea what the deal is or like how to even go about it. But I think it's funny that this, even before you were in SEO, you optimized this somehow. So you were in there, one match, done, you're good for life.
Yeah. It's like I needed like a Google version of like a dating app, and that's like exactly what I did. Like I put in the parameters and it spat out his picture.
Wow. All right. So desert island movies. So are you familiar with the concept of desert island movies from The Office? These are the movies that you're on a desert island and you've got 5 movies and that's it, that you're going to watch for the rest of your life. Go.
So Harry Potter, obviously, as
Which
you know.
one?
So yeah, and I specified this. I'd go 1 and 8.
Okay.
For the reason of 1 has like the introduction of the magical Harry Potter world. It's amazing. And then 8, just like the final one, you can't top that.
So dark at the end.
It is dark, but it's amazing too.
It is pretty good.
All the feels. And then, so if we're going with 5 movies, I would probably throw Ever After on there, which is like a Cinderella type of movie with Drew Barrymore.
Oh no, I've seen that. I remember that. Okay.
So cute. And the reason I would put that on there, that was a sister movie that like my sister and I just watched over and over and over again.
Has made me watch that movie. Yep. I know what you're talking about.
And then this one's like kind of weird and people think I'm a weirdo for this one, but I love Coneheads.
Coneheads?
Coneheads has so many celebrities from like SNL in it. Like people just keep making random appearances throughout the movie that like you wouldn't even realize. And again, I think I like that one because my dad always like watched it on like CBS. Like I just remember watching that movie a ton when I was little.
I did not expect. So last episode, I should say, Sal Sura mentioned Speed Racer, which was something that I had not thought about in many, many years. And now Coneheads. Had not thought of Coneheads in many, many, many years. What is it? Dan Aykroyd, Jane Curtin?
That's
his wife from SNL.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, and then like Adam Sandler makes an appearance in it.
Really?
I think Chris Farley in it. You're gonna have to watch it now. It's got so many random celebrities in it.
My kids would never understand Why are their heads shaped like that? They would never understand.
Right? It's hard to explain that one.
All right.
And then probably for number 5, I'd go Elf, which I actually just
Oh,
watched
I
the other
love
day.
Elf.
Yes, it's so funny.
So people like I feel like you're either on like one side of the fence or the other with respect to Mr. Will Ferrell. And personally, I think he's hilarious. I've heard he's an a-hole in real life, but there are lots of people who do not find his brand of humor very funny at all. And literally anytime I see, whether it be Step Brothers, Old School, Elf, like I'm crying laughing. I celebrate his entire work.
That's how I feel. I love Will Ferrell. He's hilarious. I mean, just Elf has so many hysterical lines in it. Like it's so good. I had the kids watch it even, and like even they were throwing their head back laughing. It's a funny movie, no matter what age you are.
What I love about Elf in particular is that it is kid friendly. Some of his other movies not so much. Yeah. But I would say anytime Elf is on, anytime Step Brothers is on, I definitely like stop what I'm doing and just watch it. Even when Elf is sometimes on in the summer, I still watch it because it's funny.
It's funny all year long.
And for me, being a Godfather fan, there's the added benefit of having James Caan, aka Sonny Corleone, right? So Godfather being one of my desert island movies, you get an older aged Sonny Corleone. So
that's right.
That's the added benefit and the tie-in. So look at me tying everything together. Okay, last couple of questions. Last meal. You're going to the electric chair. What are you eating?
I'd go with an awesome steak and a baked potato. Just recently, I was at for Content Marketing World. They had, one of those dinners where they invite everyone out because they want them to buy Percolate. And we went to Marble Room. And the meal that I had at Marble Room, if you're not in Cleveland, it's really fancy, expensive steakhouse. It was fantastic. Like I'll dream about that meal until I die. It was just an amazing steak. The sides were so good. They had an open bar and a lot of good appetizers, but it was the steaks that really brought it home.
So what is it? A filet mignon, a New York strip, a T-bone, a sirloin?
It was filet mignon, this one,
right,
and it was so good. I like medium rare. I'm one of those people.
Really?
It was delicious.
An aristocrat. That was a good fellas reference. So the funny thing about my wife is that she has the ability to, even if you would not put prices on a menu, and it's funny that you mentioned filet mignon, she would naturally, just by looking at the menu without prices, automatically, and it's like a sixth sense that she has, go to the most expensive item on the menu, even if the price is all gone. And so she loves her filet mignon, and I'm never one to deprive her of it. So
she's got quality taste. I get that. It's delicious.
It is delicious, but yeah, that's just funny. So last question, what music do you listen to? What are you listening to right now? What's on your music app?
So obviously I have a lot of kids songs on there, unfortunately. There's a lot of Frozen.
Baby Shark.
Oh my God.
Do you watch Ryan's Toy Review? Do your kids like Ryan's Toy Review?
Is that the one where they unbox all the toys?
Well, there's a lot where they unbox the toys, but this one in specific is my son is a fanboy of Ryan's Toy Review. And this kid, his family, and there are a lot of families like this, is very prevalent on YouTube Kids, if you have that version of YouTube. And Ryan's Toy Review is a particular show. And again, they're a family, and they follow this kid around, and they unbox toys, and they do all kinds of like crazy stuff. I've heard that this kid is worth like $8 million. And now you're starting, if you go to your Target and your Walmart, you're going to see Ryan's Toy Review merchandise. And this is from a kid who's like 8 years old that has a deal with Target and Walmart, and my kids love him. And I just don't get it. And I'm also like, why didn't I just film my entire family? And why don't I just spend all my time editing and posting those videos on YouTube?
I thought about that. Like, even if even if you won't make 8 million, like what if you made 10 grand? Like that would still be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be. So I'm secretly jealous, but if you watch the videos, it's a little bit, it reminds me of like back in the day, the Teletubbies, where like the kids like it, but the parents don't really like it. Kind of creepy and weird.
Yeah. Oh
So,
yeah, we had to tell the kids that YouTube broke for a while because they kept watching. We were watching the one with Miss Hands where she just like opens the toys.
oh yeah, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
too much. But I do listen to adult music too. I'm a big country fan. So I like Garth Brooks. I like Tim McGraw. I'm kind of like the older classics.
Back when country was country, now it's just pop.
Yeah, country. And I do like pop too. I actually really like Justin Bieber and Taylor Swift. I still love Britney Spears. So I have kind of I think Baby is still one of the greatest songs.
Really? Okay.
I love the song.
All right.
Yeah, it's a mix there. I listen to pretty much anything.
Yeah, my wife likes some of Justin Bieber's songs, but thinks he's a jerk. And he is.
Oh, he is, for sure.
But anyways, so where can our audience follow you?
Sure. So I'm on Twitter. My handle is @MAGZ, as in zebra, SBARR. So that's Mags Barr. And then my Instagram is very similar, but it was already taken, so I had to change it up a little bit. It's MAGZIEBARR. So they're both Mags Bar and Magzie Bar.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Maggie, thank you for staying up so late. I know you've got a family, so like this is a lot to ask. It's like 10:15 Eastern. And two, thanks for coming on and being so candid and telling kind of the old war stories. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. It was great to be on here.